again, everybody, and welcome to another Transition to Greatness. My name is Bruce Starr, and for literally weeks and months now, I've wanted to do a show just on all these incredible executive orders that have been signed by our president. I've been watching each and every week and now months, this president signing decrees, executive orders that have just turned the whole world inside out and upside down, but in a very, very good way. So what I want to do is, I have the entire list of executive orders that this president has signed. And I wanted to just have a summary for you to be able to just go to that video and say, let me see all those executive orders that he did again. Is it possible that he really did all those executive orders? Did he really do all those positive things? Because I don't see any of that on television. I don't see any of that in the newspapers. How can he be doing all these things without me seeing it on television? Well, it's very, very simple, but at the same time, there's this very difficult edge that we have to get past. Because, hey, I grew up during the days of Walter Cronkite. And if Walter Cronkite, the man doing the evening news on CBS, when he came on, everyone was watching. Not only was everyone watching, but everyone believed what he was reporting on. And the parties, the political parties that we had back then, well, they no longer resemble the parties that we had back then. And we'll go over that a little bit today. But I wanted to just put it all out there so that if you had friends or family that they say, oh, that president, he hasn't done a thing. He's just broken up this country. He's done terrible things. He hasn't done anything. Why would anyone in their right mind want to vote for him? I've got to tell you, up until about 6 months ago, 6, 7, 8 months ago, I felt the exact same way. I did. I was watching the news, just like perhaps you and so many other people, and I believed everything they said on the news. Now, I've been hearing about being asleep and being hypnotized and being brainwashed, and that TV did a lot of brainwashing and hypnotizing. And I kind of thought, well, you know what? It's possible. It's maybe even probable. So what I did was I stopped watching the commercials. I stopped watching those horrible drug commercials telling everybody to get on prescription drugs as soon as they could, even though they were told how harmful they were and what terrible side effects they had. But that didn't deter people, and it didn't deter me until I came to realize that the entire broadcast media was not only very one-sided, but it was owned, and you need to grasp a hold of this concept. It's owned by a handful, very few people who are controlling, outright controlling what you hear and what you see, what you spend your money on, where you go and entertain yourself, clothing that you buy, they have it all directed towards you and me. And there came a time when the news started showing a scoreboard on the upper right-hand corner, telling us how many people were sick and how many people were dying. And when I saw a scoreboard, I knew there was something very, very wrong with what I was watching. And from that day forward, I stopped watching the news. Now, every once in a while, if I'm at a friend's house and they have the news on, I'll watch a few minutes of it. I'll watch one or two hosts on one of the networks that makes the most sense to me, that doesn't seem to be affected by the puppeteers. But after watching for just a few minutes, I would get sick to my stomach because I knew what they were saying was downright false, was wrong. And they were brainwashing everyone that was watching. Now, I grew up in New York. There's a lot of very intelligent people in New York, and we pride ourselves on watching the news, reading the newspapers. And then a few years ago, after I moved out of New York, I would look at the New York Post and I would look at the New York Times and I'd say, what in tarnation is going on here? What is this news that I'm reading? Why is one newspaper so diametrically opposed to the other and against each other? I said, I don't remember newspapers being like that. And then the big newspaper in New York, I remember reading stories in that newspaper that I know were just wrong. Just wrong. And then I started hearing information about two very powerful brothers who were buying elections by influencing local politicians and putting a lot of money into colleges and universities. And what did those colleges and universities have to do in response to receiving all that money? They had to put out reports if they were asked by these very manipulative brothers to serve their own personal needs. So if a so-and-so college came out with a report that said vitamin E was bad for you, don't take vitamin E. Well, they came out with it, and there it was in the press. Now, I know how terrific vitamin E is and how important it is, but when I saw a report declaring how bad vitamin C was for you, I knew that whoever was reporting that was not on the right side of history and not on the right side of decency. And that from that point on, I saw that if you have enough money or donated enough money to anybody or anything, you could buy them. You could buy college reports, statements. You could buy newspaper articles. You could buy reporters. You could buy politicians. And all of this started coming very clearly to me. And I stopped watching television and I started gathering ideas, intelligence. I started researching for myself what was really going on, not reported on mainstream television, because again, there's nothing useful there, only what they want you to know. And you know what? I get it. If those reporters couldn't stomach doing that work any longer, what would happen? They get fired from their cushy $1 million-a-year job, and they get some young person who was motivated and didn't have the same morals and standards to take over. So what are those reporters, newspaper and television reporters forced to do? Bite the bullet and just do it, knowing darn well what they're doing is wrong. We're learning illegal, unconstitutional, and the adjectives can go on and on and on. They're all going to be very soon on the wrong side of history as they broke law after law after law, doing crimes against humanity, trying to influence them in a very negative way. So that's really what I wanted to say about that. And now I want to go into screen sharing with you because I want to show about these executive orders that have come down since 2017. And I want to start with 2017 because some of these are so important. Look at this very first one. And you're saying, oh, okay, blocked the property of persons involved in serious human rights abuse or corruption, crimes against humanity, crimes against children, human trafficking. And people that committed terrible crimes, from that point onward, would have their assets seized wherever they were in the world, whether they were in Swiss banks, the Cayman Islands, in underground caves. They would be found, it would be found, and it would be taken from them. Now, way back then, in 2017, this president traveled all around the world, getting all the local leaders of their countries on board with this huge peace plan. And most of them did. Maybe not willingly, but eventually, reluctantly, after the president showed them some information that was really detrimental to their careers and their reputations. Because many people around the world are creating and doing terrible crimes against children. So this started in 2017. Whoever is caught for doing these crimes against children, their assets would be seized. Now, who are these people? Some of them are some of the most richest and powerful people in the world. And they don't just have thousands in their bank, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. They don't have millions. Some of them billions, and even some of them trillions. So when you're wondering where all this money is going to come from that you're hearing about with these incentives and all this kind of thing, Congress is not aware of all of these monies being gathered and seized, but the president knows about it. He knows very, very well about it. So this is huge. 2018, huge, that if you're arrested for trafficking, and nobody really knew too much about human trafficking back then, but if you're arrested for trafficking, your assets will be seized. Let's go up to 2018. Okay, here's a wonderful thing. I hear people say, oh, Trump, he wants to take Medicare away from seniors. He wants to take Social Security away from seniors. Hey, when I was on the other side, when I was a Democrat, I heard those same things. They were all false. They were wrong. You know, in 2016, or when they were first beating up on Trump, and I'll explain why in a second that they did that. When they were first beating up on Trump, I remember seeing videos. See if you remember seeing these videos where people were saying that Trump was going to take the Grand Canyon and start building condos there. He was going to break up national parks and start building condos. I said, what a son of a bee this man is. Who is he crazy? Who does he think he is? It was all false. It was all fake news created by people who wanted to dirty him and didn't want him to be president because they knew that he was going to be not in their pocket, that he was a free thinker, that he wasn't beholden to anyone. He didn't owe anybody anything. He made his own fortune. Whatever we heard about him, good or bad, I've got to tell you something. When I was in the Democratic side, I'd look at this man and say, what a cocky son of a gun. What a nervy, nasty guy. Oh, I didn't care for him at all. But I've got to tell you, if you've been watching him in the last 6 or 8 months since this terrible pandemic has happened, he has literally grown up before our eyes. And if you watch him closely, you will see that this is a different man, a man on a mission to help us, a man on the mission to help people. Let me give you an example between something that happened in 2008 and something that happened in 2020. In 2008, when real estate collapsed and everyone was in dire straits, the president at the time, what did he do? He bailed out bankers. He bailed out bankers, gave billions to them. And what did he give to the people? Nothing. We were left on our own. And it took us nearly 6 or 7 years to recover from that. You remember that? Just a few years ago. Step forward to 2020, and we had this pandemic. And how did this president react to it? He took trillions of dollars and gave a majority of it to the people. People received money from this president. So if you want to figure out who's for who and who wasn't for who, that's a huge, huge way to figure out who's there to help and who is there not to help. Okay? So, protecting our nation's seniors, Medicare, there's so much more. Let's just, because we're never going to be able to look at all of these. So in the very beginning of 2020, here it's kicking in, combating human trafficking and online exploitation in the United States. It was signed the 31st of January. Who did it benefit? It benefited the people and children. This was a huge executive order, huge. Okay, there's so many that he did. I can't possibly go over all of them, but I'm going to go over several of them. Okay, so here they are. Okay, preventing the hoarding of health and medical resources to responding to COVID. Okay, but there's so much more that now we're getting into April. Okay, here's a real big one, establishing the committee for the assessment of foreign participation in the United States telecommunication services sector. Looking into it, not just letting people take advantage of us with telecommunications. Okay? Let's see. So many of them. Look at how many there are. Okay? This was huge. Okay? In March, May 7th, 2020, I remember on TV watching our president go up to Maine and talk to dozens of Maine fishermen. Now, during the last presidency, you're not going to believe this, but it's absolutely true. Hard to believe, but it'll show you where people's president's mind was at. He wrote an executive order promoting American seafood competitiveness and economic growth. Now, again, you're not going to believe this. Fishermen, American fishermen, had to do without over 4,000 square miles of the most valuable fishing waters in the world that were given to the likes of China and other countries. We were not allowed to fish them. Our fishermen in Maine, Massachusetts, were not allowed to fish the most valuable fishing waters in the world because those rights were given to China. And then we had to buy back our fish from China. Well, on the 7th of May, those valuable fishing waters were returned to American fishermen. Imagine this was allowed to happen. But this is an exact idea of why there's going to be major problems for some of our past executives. It's any day now, and we'll do a show on so many of the laws that were broken and so much crimes against humanity. Here's another huge executive order signed on the 28th of March, preventing online censorship. Who did it benefit? It benefited the people. Okay? Another one signed on the 19th, regulatory relief to support economic recovery. Who did it benefit? It benefited the people. Okay? Huge one right here. No one is any bigger than, no executive order is any bigger than this one right here. Executive Order 13928, blocking property of certain persons associated with the International Criminal Court. What did this mean? It means that criminals who were arrested in America could no longer be taken out of our country by foreign criminal courts, who were many times run by this mystery shadow group of people. So if you broke the law in America, you could not be taken out of our country and basically released by these other criminal courts, because these other criminal courts, they were all doing this. So they weren't going to put anybody in jail. Not anymore. You broke these laws, child trafficking, pedophilia. You broke these laws here. You were going to stay here and you were going to face the courts right here. Who did this benefit? Wow. Greatly benefits America. And guess what? As they arrested not 10 or 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 people, 100,000 people or more were arrested that were associated with pedophilia. And these people who were arrested, what did one of the former executive orders state? If you're arrested, your assets are going to be seized. Could you imagine arresting, let's just say, tens of thousands of pedophiles and child traffickers and human traffickers? And this happens in each country. Let's just say here for right now. Imagine if 10,000 of those people were arrested and all their assets were seized. And each one of those were terrifically and terribly wealthy people from their activities who had billions to trillions in their bank accounts. Imagine how much of that money is going to be recovered, and it's going to be redistributed to everyone, everywhere in the world. What I'm speaking about is NESARA and GESARA. GESARA is a global economic kind of recovery, and NESARA is a national. All this money is going to be collected and redistributed to everyone so that there'll be no longer will people be poor and desolate and desperate and missing all of their human rights. We'll talk more about that in another video, okay? So here we go. What a huge, huge opportunity here for our country. Here's another huge one, 13930, strengthening the child welfare system for America's children. If people say to you, Trump doesn't care about anybody or anything other than himself, and that's what I thought too, because I was watching the news, reading the newspapers, and that's all they kept pounding into my head, and pounding into millions of people's heads. And I started saying to you before, people that consider themselves super intelligent, they scour the television stations for news and read the newspapers, and all they're taking in is brainwashing material. 100% against this president. Have you ever seen 100% of newspaper stories and TV stories, mainstream media against one person? 100%? I've never heard of that before. That should show you who is controlling the broadcast media. It is a few families controlling what you see, what you hear, and what you think, and what you feel. And that's what they're doing, and to make sure that their agenda gets taken care of. And they're making sure that you go along with it. Imagine being told to wear a mask. Imagine being told that this was a greater virus and flu than any other. Have you ever heard of countries being shut down because of a flu or a virus before? We have them every year. Folks, we need to think about this. Have we ever encountered an entire world going into a complete economic shutdown and collapse because of a virus that, quite frankly, happens every year? Just do the research and you'll find out for yourself what I'm saying is true. Okay? Okay, let's keep going. Everything is here. The Council for American Workers and American Workforce Policy, modernizing and reforming the assessment and hiring of federal job candidates. Who does that benefit? It benefits the people. White House Hispanic Property Initiative, benefiting the people Hispanics. And here on the 24th of July, 13937, access to affordable, life-saving medication. Signed on the 24th of July. Who does this benefit? Just about everyone you probably know is on medication. I'm not. My wife's not. My daughter's not. But just about everyone out there has been watching those TV shows, and they're on medications, and they were spending an average of $1,500 a month on certain medications. Look at this one. 13938, decreasing drug importation to lower prices for American patients. Lowering prices for patients by eliminating kickbacks to middlemen. Do you know? Now, who is this for? Is this for Trump or is this for people? It's all for people, to help people. The millions and millions of people that are on prescription drugs, instead of spending up to $1,500 on one particular drug, that's going down to $35. $35. Why didn't I hear about this on TV? What is going on? Why didn't I hear about this on TV? Because you're not going to hear about it on TV, because it would make our president look good. And there's two things they're not going to do, mainstream media. They're not going to make this president look good, because they are on the way out and he's after them, and the battle is just about over. And you're not going to hear them report against themselves all the terrible things that they're doing. Those two things you're not going to see on television. All the good things going on, all the good things this president is doing, and they're not going to report, anybody is not going to report on the bad things that is these people are doing, who are the shadow people, okay? So there's so much here. This one here, addressing TikTok and other software platforms owned by the Chinese government, WeChat, all of these addressing the threat against Americans, benefiting. What does this all do? It benefits America to address the threat of WeChat and taking additional steps to address the emergency with respect to information and communication being leaked and us being spied on. Okay? These are just the executive orders that he has done. What an extraordinary job. If someone says to you, what has he done? He hasn't done anything. He's broken this country down in half. That's what mainstream media wants you to think. And you know what? The smarter the people that I know, the more locked into this concept that they are, that Trump is a bad, bad guy. Hey, I'm not saying he hasn't done things in his past that were not that great. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that he hasn't done things where he said the wrong things. He was insensitive. I remember someone just saying to me, I can't be with a president that mocked someone who had a disease or who had something wrong with him. Yes, he did that. He's not a perfect guy, but he has turned his life around, and he has put together these executive orders that are helping each and every one of us big time. I want to thank you so much for watching the show, and please stay tuned. Go to Transition2Greatness.net, Transition2Greatness.net. Hang out there, read all the things that are going on, see the videos that we've already produced in the past, catch up on all the videos that you've seen. There's so much helpful information. A lot of videos there by other people. Hang out there. Let us know how you feel. Let us know how you think. Thank you so much for being here with me today. My name is Bruce Starr. I've been a TV and radio talk show host since 1993, and I'm thrilled to be able to bring you this very helpful and vital information for you to digest and consider, because once this all breaks open, you're going to need to know how and why and when. Stick close and we'll let you know. Bye-bye, everybody.